Hey guys, KingRazzel here, and today we're going to be talking about the Microsoft exclusive title ReCore. This game came out on September the 13th, and we're going to be reviewing it based on its story, gameplay, and value. So let's go ahead and jump right into it with the story. ReCore begins with your character, Jewel Adams, walking around the planet of Far Eden with her robotic companion Mac to find a way to get their base back online. Little is given about her backstory, but her motivations are to shut down all the robots that have become hostile. From here, the story follows Jewel as her and her robotic companions try to shut down all the bad robots. Along the way, she'll have run-ins with another human named Kai, as well as the main villain of the game, Victor, whose goal is to destroy all humanity. In my opinion, the story is very bare bones and will have you a lot of the time thinking, wait, what? That can't be all. But it is. Most of the dialogue you'll have is between Jewel and her robotic companions. However, the robots speak in gibberish that only Jewel can understand, so it's basically her talking to herself most of the time.
Aw, come on, Seth. We'll do it together.
There's also the option to learn about some of Jewel's backstory, as well as why she's on the far-off planet via audio recordings that are scattered around the world. For the sake of spoilers, I won't discuss them, but I will say that they are relatively interesting and worth finding. ReCore is a third-person shooter with a surprising emphasis on platforming. It takes place in an open world where you'll wander around in search of dungeons where the majority of your story will take place. Let's go ahead and talk about these shooting mechanics first. Jewel only has one weapon at her disposal, a rifle. However, this rifle has several different variations of fire. You can fire red bullets, blue bullets, yellow bullets, and white bullets. White bullets are your standard ammunition. You'll start the game with these, and after you've gotten the other types, you'll probably never touch them again. The color-coded bullets apply to various enemies in the world. Say an enemy that you see in the game has a red light around its body. Well, then you'll use the red ammunition because that will do the most damage to that type of enemy. Each color fires the same way, with the only change up being the sound effect that plays when you shoot it. You can also charge your shot for more damage, as well as splash damage if enemies are close enough to the enemy you're firing at. Typically, my firefights played out with me jumping and dodging in the air so as to avoid enemy attacks, while I let my robotic companion, usually Duncan, get up close and personal. Speaking of your companions, let's go ahead and talk about them next. To my knowledge, there are 3 different companions available to you in the game: Mac, Duncan, and Seth. Mac starts out with the dog exoskeleton, Duncan with the monkey-like one, and Seth with the spider. However, at any time you can switch them between whatever frame you choose. I believe there are a total of 5 frames in the game at present, however I only found 4 of them, so I'm assuming that the 5th one is optional. Each frame has something to do with the overworld. The dog can dig, the monkey can break stuff, and the spider can climb, and the 4th one, it's kind of like a jetpack and it can hover over small distances. As stated, you can put whatever cores you want to into these frames, but some cores do better in different frames, so just keep that in mind whenever switching them around. Next, let's talk about platforming, which is in my opinion the best part of the game. The game centers around locations called dungeons, which can be unlocked in the overworld and played through. There are 3 types of dungeons: arena dungeons, adventure dungeons, and I think the 3rd one's called transversal dungeons, and this is where platforming puzzles are located. It's hard to really talk about platforming because it's essentially just jumping from one place to another one, but the game does feature a double jump as well as a forward thrust. The combination of these moves mixed with the well-designed dungeons makes for some really fun platforming, especially in the final 5 missions of the game, which are basically just these dungeons put together, and it's probably the most fun that I had in this game. However, in order to get there, you have to do what I think is the least fun thing in the game: exploring the overworld. The overworld of ReCore is just not fun to explore in my opinion. It's sand and rocks, and that's pretty much it. During the first, I'd say 3/4 of the story, I didn't really notice just how boring the overworld was. I was in it for a while, and then I'd make my way to the next dungeon in the campaign, and the gameplay would kind of just keep my attention. However, once I got to the final stretch, I came to a point where I didn't have enough prismatic cores, which are basically the keys of the game, to make it to the next part of the story, which forced me to go into the overworld and hunt for them. Prismatic cores can be found in dungeons and scattered in random locations in the overworld where you'll typically need one of your companions to reach it. This brings me to the first issue that I had, which is that you can only have 2 companions at any time. At the end of the game, you have 3 companions and 4 frames, so that's basically 2 frames that you can have with you at any time. It always seemed that I had the wrong frame for the job whenever I needed it done, though. This forced me to go back to one of the quick travel locations and switch out my party almost every 5 minutes just to get a single core. This wouldn't be a problem if the fast travel points weren't so sparse. They're all so far away from you, and God help you if you only have 3 cores in the wrong frames, because then you're going to have to go all the way back to your base and switch out. Which brings me to my second issue that I had with the game, the load times. So when the game first starts, you'll probably sit through the load times and think, this is taking a while. But once you load in, you'll have quite a bit of gameplay to get through, so it won't be that big of an issue. However, once you're at the end of the game, where you need to go back and forth between your base to drop off inventory, switch out frames, or just get out of glitches, the load times are going to get really old really fast. Some of you may be saying, well then why don't you just go to the dungeons and get cores from there? Well, that's issue number 3. Dungeons are for the most part locked off until you find all the little key robot guys to open them. Once you found them all, you can enter the dungeon. However, for the most part, they are damn near impossible to find, especially in the final area of the game, where I spent a good 2 hours searching for a single little robot key, and I still don't know where it is. I mean, look at this area and tell me this is the first place you would have looked. And they aren't all hidden as well as that, but why the hell did they place it so awkwardly around the map? And speaking of the map, that brings me to my 4th issue of the game's map. So in theory, there's nothing wrong with the game's map. You open up the pause menu, scroll over to it, and you can see most of the stuff that's in the world. However, before you can see the stuff that's in the world, you basically have to have stood on top of it at some point before. Couple this with the fact that there's no way to set custom waypoints, and you're going to find yourself pausing the game over and over again just to see if you're headed in the right direction to find one prismatic core. The final issue that I had with the game is the glitches. Now, I'm not someone who usually finds glitches that annoying. I've seen my fair share, and I don't really find these glitches in this game to be that annoying either. However, I did run into a few glitches, so I figured I'd show you 2 of them just to let you kind of know what you're in for. In that one, I fell off the map while doing a platforming dungeon, and the game just kept spawning me in the wrong place for whatever reason. And in that one, I'm not really sure what happened. The enemies just didn't react to me at all, and I couldn't move, so I eventually just had to close down the application. Luckily, however, most glitches I encountered could be gotten out of just by pausing the game and going back to your base, which was a feature that I was thankful for. Overall, this game took me around 15 to 16 hours to complete. However, I think it's safe to say that a good 2 to 3 hours of that was probably load times, and another 5 was me wandering aimlessly around in the desert. Just for an idea of how long the load screens were, I'll go ahead and show you one of them. Now, they weren't all that long, but a good amount of them were. I wouldn't classify them up there with the original Bloodborne load times, but they were pretty bad. Also, the game is $40, so it's a little bit cheaper than a typical release. So, in conclusion, this game had some really fun things to do in it, and some things that gave me a stress headache. Some things I liked about the game were the platforming dungeons, boss fights were pretty fun, and even though I didn't talk about it, there's a lot of customization for your robotic frames, and I like that quite a bit. Some things I didn't like about the game were that the story wasn't really very good, the overworld wasn't very interesting, and exploring the overworld just felt like a chore. I think I'm going to give this game a 6 out of 10. I really enjoyed the platforming in this game, the dungeon design was very good for it, but like the last probably 6 hours of it just killed it for me. Top that off with the long load times and glitches, and I just can't really justify giving this game that good of a score. I do think that this game could be one to keep your eye on though if they do patch out some of the issues in it. Alright guys, so that is pretty much all that I have to say on this game. This review did go on a little bit long. I think I just wanted to vent some of my frustrations after being trapped in the desert for a good 6 to 7 hours with no food, no water, and a hot metal object on my tail. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The next review that I plan on doing will be for Dead Rising HD, and that should be coming out anytime now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.